Alright, hello, welcome to what I think is now day 26, though you'll probably see it by the thumbnail. I am recording this at 10:30 in the evening, and I know there's a bit of hum in the background, but by now I just don't have the nerve to fix it again, because I still don't know where it's coming from. I've tried turning off the speakers, I've tried checking it out. When I first started recording, it was quiet, and then it jumped up. So I'm still having trouble with it. It's changing all the time, and when I think I have it fixed, it comes back again. So I think the best way to do it is once we move and I have time to try to set up everything from scratch, that's when I'll do the testing and plug in components one by one. Second thing you may have noticed is my throat is really sore. I've got a pain in my throat and it's going all the way to my ears. At least it started to this evening. So I'm going to be checking more on that and seeing if it gets worse. Because like with my girlfriend before, it might get worse. And since holidays are coming up, it's not that fun. Third of all, it's my birthday today. I haven't been celebrating that much. We've celebrated over the weekend. So it was fun going to get my license for freelancing today, or doing a business which is freelancing, and the lady behind the counter noticing it and just having fun, but that's just minor details. Fourth, as I've noticed, I've gone to set up everything, or to learn everything I need in order to set up that license for having a business, for being a freelancer. And it turns out it's a lot simpler than it seemed. At least there were many different tutorials on how to do it. But even though I'm from the neighboring country, since Slovakia and the Czech Republic have good relations, I can get the registry of whether I've been convicted or not, because you need to hand that in order to prove that you can be a businessman. I can just do that remotely through the checkpoints, as they call it, which are like administrative centers where they can get it online. So I just handed in a notice today that I want it. They'll let me know in up to 5 business days, I think, usually, and I'll go get it. I'll go back to the freelancer administrative office and hand it in there. It doesn't even have to be the one in the district where my residence is going to be. So that's pretty nice. I can go anywhere in the Czech Republic. And I'll just set it up. I'll pay 1,000 crowns, which is, I think, about 30 to 35 euros. And I can even set it to start on the 1st of January, which is ideal. And they will let everyone know, like, all the different things that I need to pay for social security and for health insurance. They will contact those administratives for me and let them know that I'm beginning freelancing. So I don't have to go anywhere else, which is really cool. Also, I finished my second voice acting contract on Upwork today. They sent me the contract, as I've said. They apologized for not sending it sooner, which is fine. I got it. I recorded it in about 20 minutes this evening, and I sent them to it just as a first version so we can iterate on it and see what they want changed. And then it was actually pretty good, and they just accepted it immediately, and the money's already on the way. So that is pretty nice as well. And quite surprising, considering that my throat is fucking sore as hell. Final thoughts. We are just about on the edge of our nerves when it comes to living in this apartment, and we can't wait to move out. So we're gonna be doing that. I think tomorrow is my final working day at the office. On Wednesday, I'm going there to sign off and to hand back all the equipment that I got, like the phone, the tablet, the PC, and stuff like that. On Thursday, I'm gonna be doing that at my actual employer, which is essentially just the guy that pays me money and where I hand in how much I've worked. Because they've been contracting me to the actual place that I worked. Strange, I know, but that's how you cut costs nowadays. or at least the costs you have to show. And that's an important topic I'll get to. And since we got that covered, the only thing that's gonna be like Thursday is gonna be the final day, is what I'm trying to say. So on Friday I'm gonna have more time, and hopefully I'll have a bit more time for these as well, so I don't have to rush them when I'm tired and I don't know what I want to speak about. Alright, so that's about it for the news. I don't have that much else to share other than the fact that I can't wait to figure the details of this out and finally have a proper working mic that I don't have to set up for 20 minutes every time I want to record. Yeah, I'll keep you posted on that one, or you will be able to hear it. Okay, so for the second part, the topic popped up just now as I was speaking, and that is, I've been thinking for the longest time that the biggest bane of modern decision making in big companies is the fact that they are public. Because if you have a board, if you check on companies that are not public and that they have their owners which have long-term strategies with them, then it's perfectly fine to not be more profitable than the year before. Whereas in the big company that I worked at Unilever, it was very much clear that the biggest goal was growth. And it had to be, because just for those people that don't know how it works, and I was that for the longest time until I really realized it. Even though I learned about it in school, I didn't get it. So the way it works is, if you are a private company, you have a few select owners which hold the majority of the not the shares, but the majority interest in the company, and they are the board. They get to decide what's going on. And since they have an actual investment in the company and they want to keep it for a longer time, they are not as likely to sell it, and therefore they have longer term goals. So it doesn't matter if the company is not growing as fast or might skip a beat. They are in for the longer game, so brand investment is much better, and overall just those more strategic decisions are more helpful and actually appreciated more. Whereas if you are a public company, once you've done an IPO and you are on shares, people who own shares, you are no longer playing in, video games or FMCG. You're playing against every other company or every other thing that is sold through shares. Because it doesn't matter if I buy technologies one day and then, grain or wheat the other day and then furniture the third day. I can just sell those on a level playing field. And so, yes, of course, I'm going to, for example, I would invest more in games since I know which, I feel like I have a better probability of knowing which ones will rise and which ones will fall. I have more info on that. For people that just trade it, it's much more simple, and especially in big companies, it's much simpler to just have a broad knowledge and go off of main things. So if you're in a private company, you have quite deep knowledge about what's going on in the company, and you can get a detailed analysis of what's going to happen. Whereas if you are an IPO, or if you are a publicly owned company, you have a few key metrics that have arbitrarily been chosen as the ones that support the health of the health of the company. And yes, of course, these have the biggest correlation, but they don't explain everything. So if you go behind and you check what's actually causing that metric to fall, then it might paint a very different picture. I'll give you the best example of how arbitrary it is that I ever got to see. And that is the way you show growth is not for the whole year. You do it for first quarter, which is first 3 months of the year, versus the first 3 months of the previous year. So just theory. Let's say you have the first quarter of 2017 was really good, and you were doing pretty well. The first quarter of the next year, 2018, was doing especially well because let's say you sell a lot of food, a lot of mayonnaise, a lot of stuff that people use for holidays. And Easter falls on the beginning of April. That means that retailers will have to buy your stuff, like if they want to have it for the Easter shoppings, they need to buy it in March, which means you can invoice it in March, which means the growth or the sales fall into March. That's quarter one. And so if you compare 2018 to 2017, it was amazing numbers. So it grew by a ton. But then let's say 2019 comes around and Easter is suddenly at the end of April. So the retailers will buy at the beginning of April. That means your sales fall into April, and that means all the sales from Easter that you got in quarter one last year are now in quarter two. Well, you can't do much because nobody from the shareholders cares about this. They will never see that shit. That arbitrary line that runs in front of Easter versus after Easter sales. And so they just see that you're not growing because suddenly, compared to that huge sale, you are stagnating, maybe even declining, like maybe growing a very small bit. But that huge spike that you were depending on is no longer there. So what I'm trying to say is, if you were a privately owned company, you could explain this to the board. But since there's such a big ton of shareholders, they won't see this. They will only see a single metric, which is growth is not as big. And so they will sell your shares. Now, okay, so what does that matter, right? There's just going to be a different person that buys it. Well, first of all, once you start selling and there's a trend, the price drops. So the people want to sell high before it drops. And other people will see that it's dropping and will want to buy because they think they're buying low. But if that investment for them is to pay off, the new investors want it to grow. And guess what? You have been showing that you can't grow the company through that one metric. They don't care that it was Easter or something. They want it to grow. So it's very possible that the new shareholders will want to vote you out. Now, of course, it's a lot more complicated than that, but that means that people up top have the highest importance in keeping the share values as high as possible, right? The values of their shares, because that means they're doing a good job and they won't be fired or replaced. They get to keep those fat bonuses. And once you have that, of course, they're going to put this shareholder at the forefront. And that, I think, is why so many public companies are making these weird decisions, right? Because it's not about the consumer. It was never about the consumer, and you know it. But that's not for public or private companies. But I think the big distinction is that the privately owned companies can make longer term decisions because they don't have to report every quarter and pray to God that the board of managers won't replace everyone. Right, so now that we got that basic part out of the way, you can see a few things. Next time you go out and check, why is this company making such a weird decision? Why is it writing this trend so late or something? It needs to be able to prove through business cases and other stuff that it will fuel the growth. Why is everyone bandwagoning being on social media all of a sudden? Because only now can you see with metrics that it's boosting it. And only now you can see it with the big corporate metrics such as Nielsen and stuff. Even though it was very clear that it is doing something good, it's become so complex that you have to do that. And I can return another example on why, for example, I wasn't employed directly at the company that I was working for. That's because if, like, the money's still going, right? It's still the same amount of money, or probably even more, because you have to pay extra to the company. Like, you have to pay the same as if you employed the guy, me, because that money still has to go to me. But on top, you have to pay to the company for having me as an employee who they're just contracting to them. So the costs are definitely higher. So why the hell would they not just employ me directly? Well, that's because that would then fall under a different subset of the table, which is being reported. Overheads, which is the payment that you make for employees, is being reported. But these other transactions, such as contracting employees from other companies, is not. So suddenly, like, you see all the motivation hidden, and you can find 90% of motivation about a company, if it is rational, suddenly clicks because they are just trying to keep those numbers as good as possible, from margin, from growth to and that margin dissipates into several other categories such as overhead and stuff. But I think that a lot of people would make a lot more sense to them how the world and how the big companies work if they realize that they are publicly owned and they have the best interest in their next quarter results. That's my little rant for today. Thanks for listening. My throat is getting more and more sore by the minute, so I'm going to cut it here. So, talk to you later. Bye.